As we await tomorrow's sentencing of Phoebe Plummer, the young Just Stop Oil activist, let's have a look at what she and I talked about last year.
Jacob, you have 6 children. Do you not care about their future? Do you not care about them being able to feed themselves? Because right now, under this government's policies, your 6 children are heading towards a future that is filled with life-threatening extreme weather events, crop failures, famine, war. Suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
Well, she will be sentenced tomorrow after she was found guilty of criminal damage exceeding £5,000 for throwing soup on Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers at the National Gallery. She's been told to prepare for a custodial sentence. However, hundreds of artists, art historians and curators have pleaded for her to be spared jail time. I'm very grateful to be joined now by Just Stop Oil Grahame, as well as my panel, the most intellectual panel, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the journalist and Conservative peer Lord Goodman. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hello, Jake.
What do you expect to happen tomorrow?
Well, I expect that Phoebe Plummer will get a prison sentence because that's very much what the judge has said. But don't forget, there was also Anna Holland.
Yes.
She's also going to be sentenced.
But from Just Stop Oil's point of view, obviously not from Phoebe's, does a jail sentence help your campaign?
I do not think that Phoebe or Anna should be going to prison for a non-violent offence. And I think that's true in general. The prisons are massively overcrowded. We should not be sending people to prison for a non-violent offence.
What sanction do you think there should be? Because there clearly should be some sanction for criminal damage.
Well, I think I've said. They accept when they undertake these actions. When we undertake these actions, we allow ourselves, we don't run away. The police are free to arrest us.
Yes.
And we accept that we're going to court in many cases. And we accept that we may well be sentenced. But those sentences should not be prison offences. Non-violent civil resistance in support of a safer, fairer world because of the climate crisis should not be a prisonable offence.
And the damage is not to the picture itself, is it? It was to the frame, and the frame then needed restoration. So that's how they managed to turn soup being thrown on a picture to being £5,000 worth of damage.
That is quite ridiculous, actually, of course. As I expect you probably know, the frame is nothing to do with the painting. It was made 200 years, I think, before the painting was painted. It's not the frames that Van Gogh would have used. So it's entirely ridiculous. This criminal offence, the judge wants them to go to prison, not because he thinks that the frame has been damaged, but because he disagrees with what Just Stop Oil is doing.
I disagree with Just Stop Oil's ambitions, but Paul, isn't the state about to fall into that classic trap, the trap it fell into with the suffragettes? You send people to prison and you make them martyrs, and that actually going to prison is exactly what the support of Just Stop Oil benefit from, particularly when you do it to young women.
Well, I don't know what happened, and I don't know what the court will decide, but I'm very unconvinced by the defence mounted by the artists for this particular reason. That the artists, as I understand it, are arguing that lots of people have created art by acting in a disruptive way. They cited the Dadaists at the turn of the 20th century. But for me, it's all a matter of intent. The Dadaists, even if you think they were absurd, were trying to create art. The protester in question was not trying to create art. Nobody's claiming that she did. She was exercising a protest and creating, arguably, we'll have to see what the judgment says, criminal damage. And if criminal damage was committed, then there's a penalty.
Nigel, what's your thought on this? That the criminal damage of £5,000 for damaging a frame does seem to be very different from going on top of a bridge and stopping a motorway and inconveniencing thousands, tens of thousands of people for a day.
Yes, it does. But I think that in the same way that the M25 sentencing was meant to be a deterrent, the same thing is happening here. I mean, unlike you, I do sympathise with the aims of Just Stop Oil. What I don't sympathise with is the methods that are being used. I mean, I don't think, for instance, the idea that you can get rid of oil by 2030 is realistic. I prefer the net zero 2050. I don't think you can take credit as you do for stopping North Sea oil licences. And I don't see that throwing soup over an oil painting stops oil. So I just don't think the methods are right. I appreciate that you're about civil disobedience, but civil disobedience has consequences, and the consequence in this case should be a jail sentence.
Can I
Of course you can.
I worked for an oil company. I was principal scientist at Shell. I worked with people up to board level. I saw the complete failure of the oil industry, who knew fully well that we were facing a climate crisis. They knew what was coming, and they lied about it, and they made no changes at all. And they used their power to influence government to get laws that protected them. And that's exactly what we've seen with, for example, the crime sentencing bill and the three recent bills that have just been enacted, which have made protest illegal.
You see, my worry is that the state makes the classic mistake of overreacting to something that is inconvenient but is not fundamentally serious. And that I agree with you, I think Just Stop Oil is counterproductive. I think it's helping my side of the argument. But that if you imprison young women for extended periods for a relatively minor offence, you boost their support, you make martyrs.
You say it's the state. But it's not a decision of ministers. This will be a decision of the court, if it is the decision.
The court is part of the state. But it's the same mistake made with the suffragettes. In a more extreme way, it's the same mistake made with the Easter Uprising in 1916. You come down like a ton of bricks on people, and then people think, oh, actually, they're martyrs. They're not fundamentally wicked. Phoebe, who we had on this programme, is not a fundamentally wicked person.
Do you think, I'm just thinking aloud, do you think people will really think they're martyrs? Or will the reaction of the average person who's not engaged with the issue think these people are causing an enormous amount of damage and they should be banged up? I'm not saying that's correct.
Depends how
I'm just asking what the reaction of the average person will be.
The truth here is that your government introduced the laws that is enabling them to be sent to prison. And that's a disgrace.
Well, not criminal damage, actually. Those laws predate the last government. But it all depends on whether they learn from the suffragettes, which may change things a good deal if they do. But I'm not going to tell them how to, because I don't want to help them. Thank you to my panel. In a moment.